President Tinubu appeals to Nigerians to shelve proposed protests, assures commitment towards a better nation.
Mr. President, listening to them, he takes what they say seriously and is working as seriously to ensure that this country is good, not just for today.
National Assembly passes 70,000 naira national minimum wage bill.
This is part of the federal government's short-term measure to mitigate the situation in the country.
Glad tidings for Jigawa residents as federal government takes MSMEs a step further with empowerment strategies.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on resolutions at the CBN 296th Monetary Policy Committee meeting.
Okay. Well, foreign exchange volatility has over time heightened tension on the naira, influencing stakeholders across board more than ever before, addressing inflationary trends. Interest rates and foreign exchange remains crucial.
At the 296th Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria, monetary policy rate was raised by 50 basis points to 26.75% from 26.25%, maintaining the highest level in Nigeria's policy rate history.
And the hike in the monetary policy rate was disclosed by the CBN Governor, Olayemi Kadoso, at the end of the 296th MPC meeting in Abuja on Tuesday, amid inflation and soaring food prices. From all indication, this hike rate has surpassed 500 points.
Now, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, inflation edged close to 34.19% in June, indicating a headline inflation by 0.24% relative to May 2024, which stood at 33.95%.
On a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate was 11.40 percentage points higher than that of June 2023, which was 22.79% among other decisions taken at MPC's 296th meeting. Is an adjustment of the asymmetric corridor around the MPR from plus 100 to minus 300 to plus 500 to minus 100 basis points.
So many figures there. And the MPC also retains the cash reserve ratio, if you like, CRR, of deposit money banks at 45% and merchant banks at 14%, and retained the liquidity ratio at 30%. Olayemi Kadoso also revealed the inflows have increased to more than $38 billion.
Although the CBN governor has maintained that the MPC members were committed to price stability and we are willing to keep tightening until inflation is tamed, economic analysts are worried over the frequent upward review of the monetary policy rate, insisting it may mar investors' confidence and affect businesses. The resolutions of CBN monetary policy meeting is therefore our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. Welcome to the program. I am Victor Azu. We are reaching you live on the network service of the NTA.
Well, you mentioned fighting. Of course, that's one word I'm sure a lot of Nigerians don't want to hear at this point in time because a lot of things are tight at the moment. But of course, I'm sure our panelists would help us analyze and, of course, make sense of the new ratios. I'm Yanwe John. I also join Vector to welcome you to Wednesday's edition of the program. Newspaper review will come in a moment, and that's when Chukwudi Okolo will join us. But for now, we've got Olajide Bello with us this morning. Olajide, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yanre. Good morning, Victor. Good morning, Nigeria. And this is the morning news. President Bola Tinubu is appealing to Nigerians, particularly the youth, to keep faith and believe in the ability of his administration to transform Nigeria to an enviable height so desired by the citizens. Information and National Orientation Minister Mohammed Idris conveyed the message of President Bola Tinubu after their meeting at the State House. Speaking on the state of the nation, the minister says the president is fully aware of the situation in the country and is working hard to turn around the social and economic situation for the good of all Nigerians.
Mr. President has asked me to, again, inform Nigerians that he listens to them, especially the young people that are trying to protest. Mr. President is listening to them. He takes what they say seriously and is working assiduously to ensure that this country is good not just for today, but also for the future.
Peaceful protest is a right of Nigerians and violent protest is criminal, so says the Nigeria Police as they promise to protect those who may want to embark on a peaceful protest. IGP Kayode Egbetokun emphasized this at the Strategic Police Managers Conference of the force in Abuja, where he assures that adequate measures have been put in place in the event of a protest with a guarantee that the force will respond in a more professional and civilized way.
To want to engage in any form of violence, and all Nigerians will come together and say no to violent protest. Yes, we know that there is hunger, times are hard, but government is doing their best to ameliorate the suffering of Nigerians.
The fourth expanded National Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Clinic, one of the federal government's strategies for making it easier to do business in Nigeria, has been launched in Dutse, Jigawa State. Vice President Kashim Shettima at the event also launched the Jigawa State Retail Shop Empowerment Program, courtesy of the Umar Namadi-led administration.
This reality compels us to aim for the front row seat in the race to leverage new tools and inventions. We are not merely catching up with the rest of the world, we are poised to overtake them. This is why I wholeheartedly welcome our partnership with Blua to inject new life into our digital revolution.
The national minimum wage bill of 70,000 naira got expeditious passage at both the Senate and House of Representatives Tuesday, as it was read the first, second and third time at plenary following its transmission from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Both chambers also approved the 6.2 trillion naira amendment to the 2024 budget, 3 trillion of which is to enable immediate implementation of the new minimum wage.
Have been made to bring about long-term solutions that would align with the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians.
This bill is to prescribe a national minimum wage and provide a legal framework for seamless review.
Similarly, the new national minimum wage bill also received expeditious consideration and passage at the House of Representatives. The Green Chamber has equally passed a bill aimed at the Nigeria Police Act for sitting Inspector General Police to finish the term of office stipulated in the letter of appointment.
And I think this contributes to providing a holistic buffer to the living conditions of our people and for their existential realities.
And that's the news at this time. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Nyemre and Victor after this commercial break. Don't go away.
Nigeria, a land of rich culture and diverse voices, where every voice matters. In times of disagreement, let's choose dialogue over discord. Together, we can find solutions through understanding and respect. Let's build a stronger Nigeria, one conversation at a time. Dialogue, not protest. Unity, not division. Nigeria, united in dialogue.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
go to the kitchen and be cooking like 5 things at the same time. It can be very crazy sometimes.
Are you the only one that enjoys your food, or other people enjoy your food?
So I happen to be the only single guy in my house, so there are a lot of ladies. So they're giving me good feedback that
Have any of these ladies eaten your food?
No. Whenever you need help, just come to me. I'll try my best in my own capacity.
Yeah. Thank you, because I want to say that I need $30 million.
Not financially. Not financially.
Name something people often pretend to enjoy to avoid being judged. Bad boss.
Long conversation.
Lecture. Sex.
So you pretend to enjoy. Survey says.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand. We make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Ethnicity is unique, we are more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, strengthening unity. We know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
The federal government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
To the people of Nigeria, we must protect our country. We must say protest not in my state. We must adopt a peaceful and dialogue-driven approach in our pursuit of change. Clearly, we must articulate our demands and be willing to listen to others. Engage in open and constructive conversations with the government. Many of us are weary of the agenda of the promoters of the planned protest. To protest is a process that ends in dialogue. But the peaceful protest is not guaranteed. Let us start with dialogue, not protest. We must find a rally point, create a podium, and take turns to air our views without exposing innocent citizens to danger. Remember that harming ordinary citizens who may not share our vision is not acceptable. Instead, we must work towards winning their endorsement. We cannot destroy what we have to demand for what we do not have. This government is addressing the issues, and we want to be part of finding solutions. We want rice, not cries, food, not boots. We want dialogue, not protest. We must protect Nigeria.
Up next is newspaper review.
And Chukwudi Okoli-Ubaja, our newspaper reviewer, is already seated.
Yes, I am, Victor.
Fired up for action, I guess.
I want to think so. Good morning, Victor.
Good morning. Welcome.
How are you today?
I'm all right.
I always like your colors. Here is actively pensive. Imagine the combination. Actively pensive. How are you? Good morning.
Very well, Chikudi. Good morning to you. Good to see you again today.
Yeah.
All right, shall we get to it?
Yes, let's get on with the Nigerian pilot this morning. The lead story, of course, is protest, and this one is screaming. It says Tinubu appeals for calm. Riders says he's working diligently to address all concerns of Nigerians, having listened to their demands. Information Minister says President urges them to exercise patience. That federal government is working assiduously to ensure Nigeria is good, not just for today, but for future. It shows that interventions put in place by government must go to those that should benefit. All of that on page 4 of the pilot. Above that, Akpabio apologizes to Senator Natasha over comments. Interesting. Page 9 has that. And just still on that same page, we have Peter Obi's lawyers write Bayo Onanuga, demand 5 billion naira apology. Also on page 9. Let's look away from that now. Below the lead story, we have National Assembly passes new minimum wage bill. And Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala 6th second term as Director General of WTO. That's a good one. And of course, the women are pushing for that. Central Bank of Nigeria increases lending rate to 26.75%. So that's the much I can take from the Nigerian pilots this morning. Other headlines are on the front page. Of course, you can pick up that to see that. Let's see the Daily Sun now. The Daily Sun leads with Tinubu moves to avert protest, begs youths. Riders appeals for more time to address concerns. It's ill-advised, should be discarded, according to the IGP. Those who led protest in 2012 trying now to abort it. That's credited to Atiku. All of that on page 6. Interesting times ahead. Of course, the papers are letting us in on what to expect. Looking below the picture story, we have Cardoso lists causes of economic woes. The Riders says CBN will return money in dormant accounts to rightful owners. The question is how? Page 25 has that. We have allegation over protest. Obi angry, demands retraction, apology from Onanuga. And of course, we have Kyari dares Dangote to name NNPCL officials who own petroleum blending plant in Malta. Page 21 carries that interesting story. And we have, of course, right here, Senate raises 2024 budget to 35.055 trillion naira, amends finance bill. All right, that's much I can take. Victor.
All right, and quickly on the front page of the leadership papers, the protest is the lead story here, but we have dealt with it on other papers. And so above the nameplate, Trump shooting, U.S. Secret Agency boss resigns. That's on page 7. Tinubu okays Northwest Southeast Development Commissions. That's also on page 7, both above the masthead. And then below it, Dangote NNPC spat creating wrong signal for Nigeria. That's according to Adesina and Otedola. And on the right side of the front page, fresh rise in local airfare imminent. That's according to operators. And details, you get them on page 19. Experts applaud as CBN raises interest rate to 26.75%. For details of those experts, page 19. Arab doctors collected 5 million naira food items, Ondo core members. You get details of that on page 7. FG injects 1 trillion naira into manufacturing sector. That's according to Wale Edu, and that's about it on the front page of the leadership, page 21. That is.
There's one quick interesting story here. I'm sure Chikudi will be interested. It says 180 House of Reps lawmakers seek release of Nnamdi Kanu. That's on page 5 of the pilot. Chikudi.
And then NAS passes 70,000 naira new minimum wage bill. I almost missed that.
That's no news.
Yes, since I am involved. What did Ojuku call him?
Because I am involved.
Because I am involved. Because he called me in. We have made a case here for
good dialogue to come into place so that Nnamdi Kanu can be released to be productive to himself and to be productive to his country. Are the people who are rallying for this to happen putting on their thinking cap so that it can happen in the shortest possible time? That's the question. We wish them luck. Well, you can see that the planned protest is actually gaining traction in terms of reaction to it, unexpectedly too. The president is saying, please don't do it. Rather, let's dialogue. And some people who are in support of the federal government would want to list a few things that have been done really by the government. Maybe a few is not, proper to be pre-posed to the phrase there or the sentence. Things that have actually been done by this government. The latest being the student loan scheme that has now got off the ground and all that. There are other things that have happened. The 150 no customs due window on imported food and all that is another case in point. There are other ones. I'm not here to act like I am a government aide. So let's not go into that. And let's talk about what government is not doing is intimidate those who are planning, to put on their marching boots. And that is good because government recognizes that these people have a right to assembly that says, no, we don't agree with this as long as it is a very peaceful one. What government is not sure of is whether this planned protest is not going to go the way of NSARS, which, though seemingly noble in its intentions, got hijacked way into it. And we now started hearing of looting and even arson here and there. That is what government is not sure of. And that is what the security agencies must try to make sure it doesn't happen this time around without hitting the protesters with jackboots or with the butts of their rifle or whatever. We are now in modern times where people should be allowed to engage in those things that are actually endorsed internationally. So our hope is that the president's plea will be listened to because Victor, don't be jealous, you too, would agree with me that the economy should not be allowed to suffer further harm. It's already in a harmed way. It's not just in the way of harm, it's been harmed already. Think what the protest would do to even get things worse for us. So everyone needs to really be cautious about this. It's very, very important that we are, that we do all we can to avert it if we can. But if it must go on, for civility to accompany this protest. The Kenyan case should not happen here. We know the number of deaths that happened.
Well, Kenya, I think happened the way it happened because of suppression.
Suppression could really backfire. When young people, get on the streets, you need to be extra careful the way you restrain them. Because that's the nature of young people. Bangladesh just, happened again the other time. I saw a man being dropped from a truck. They reported he was not dead at that point, but later he died, We have to be careful how we handle this situation. It's a very sensitive one. Very, very. Yes. The ding-dong affair between Dangote Refinery and NNPCL would seem to be continuing. Let's pray that at the end of the day, we would protect our own. I am not criticizing NNPCL officials for whatever they have said, but the wrong signals being sent to the international community, whom we are wooing practically for FDI, foreign direct investment, is those signals are not good for us, for people who actually want others to come and try out their hands in getting the Nigerian economic situation on better seas.
When I mentioned the National Assembly passes 70,000 naira new minimum wage, Yen Ray felt it wasn't news. But I think the news, of course, we had known this for some time now. You know, the news is that the National Assembly gave it expedited, attention, and all three, first, second, three.
I said,
as in one day.
I said I'm not government spokesman. Actually, it was one of the things that occurred to me to mention concerning what government has done. If Yen Ray does not, Yen Ray, please, does not laugh about 70,000, it's probably because she's definitely not on minimum wage.
Who said so?
Well, minimum wage.
I'm not laughing either.
No.
I'm not laughing.
No. Listen.
Excuse me?
You've not let me finish. Definitely your salary is well above the minimum wage. That's what I'm saying. What you want
But I'm being paid according to the minimum wage.
Fine. Don't be too fast about it. Definitely when the minimum wage is doubled, I don't know whether your salary would eventually be doubled, because my experience when I was actively, out there was that anytime people were given some, succor in terms of what they take home at the end of the day, it did not quite percolate that way up to the last grade level.
Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly. That's why
So
it's not news for me. It would have been news if the House of Reps members were pushing for an increase. And maybe they said maybe 75,000 or 80.
Maybe they did the proverbial party.
We're talking about party. There's this news.
I didn't hear that.
Please, there's this news that gives me so much joy this morning, and it is about the Senate President apologizing to Senator Natasha Akpoti publicly yesterday.
Yes.
It gives me so much joy because, to see someone in that position apologize to a woman. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to offend a man or a woman,
Yes.
but to have to come out to apologize, I think it's one message, that is loud and clear to Nigerian men on how they should treat women. You understand? And of course, show respect to them. Okay, and if you breach or if you err in any way, it's important that you apologize. I think it would go a long way. Because even in families, in homes, sometimes men don't even want to apologize. So for the Senate President to apologize to a member of the Senate, I'm so happy about it.
We don't have a lot of time, but quickly, when I played back that tape, to be honest, it may not have come out well or right. But if you see the flow, if you read the flow of that conversation, I don't think he meant anyhow.
What he meant or what he didn't mean, the apology is the news now.
He has
the apology is the news.
Why are you trying to be more pious than the Pope?
Exactly.
The point is
I'm
this.
just echoing what he said.
Quickly, please, I'm not going to make things too personal, but I think this is relevant. I had the opportunity to teach, hold a training for an NNPCL subsidiary. One of the ladies, after the emotional intelligence aspect of it, thanked us profusely and said, now I am going back to work with one elderly man that is my subordinate, who reminds me every day that he has somebody like me at home. And that his daughter is more brilliant than those things are absolutely unnecessary.
Exactly.
So that is the point she is making. Social etiquette needs to be taught in this country.
All right.
My producer wants us to go, but let's quickly celebrate another woman, Toby Amusan. She's been named Nigeria's flag bearer for the Olympics, which begins in 2 days' time. And of course, we wish them all the best. That's news.
That's not news.
Because Toby is the one leading the team. That's why it's not news.
We wish them all the
best. By the way, I hope you know Konjo Iweala will get a second term. We're rooting for her.
We are rooting for her. Have supported her already.
It's Women's Day on the show. I conquered the two men. Stay with us. Good Morning Nigeria continues.
Nigeria, a land of rich culture and diverse voices, where every voice matters. In times of disagreement, let's choose dialogue over discord. Together, we can find solutions through understanding and respect. Let's build a stronger Nigeria, one conversation at a time. Dialogue, not protest. Unity, not division. Nigeria, united in dialogue.
Meet lovebirds Jayola and Adama Davies. Their dream of living together as man and wife has finally been fulfilled.
The latest couple in town. Mr. and Mrs. Giant Davis!
But an invasion by their troublesome families was not a scenario they bargained for. Her mother moves in. His mother shows up with his little niece. Then her younger sister joins the scramble.
You want to stay?
Married life suddenly becomes very complicated even before it started. Follow their story on this channel as they confront every challenge as it comes. Family forever, the story of our lives.
Nigeria means a lot to me.
And Nigeria means peaceful cohesion.
My country.
We continue to pray, and then hopefully we will come to understand that unity of purpose, unity of living together.
Our ethnic beliefs and background and culture is our strength.
Ever since the amalgamation period of 1914 to date, about 109 years ago, the people of Nigeria live very peacefully with one another.
I think diversity helps a lot to enhance robust development in Nigeria.
All over the country, you have so many ethnic groups, over 250. That is enough to tell you that this is a blessed country, and God has kept together as one indivisible entity.
This season, enjoy all the better moments with GoTV. Your football party GoTV, they give you better deal of decoder plus GoTenna for only 19,900 naira. Make you enjoy correct football action live on Top Super Sport. GoTV, love it.
To the people of Nigeria, we must protect our country. We must say protest not in my state. We must adopt a peaceful and dialogue-driven approach in our pursuit of change. Clearly, we must articulate our demands and be willing to listen to others. Engage in open and constructive conversations with the government. Many of us are weary of the agenda of the promoters of the planned protest. To protest is a process that ends in dialogue. But the peaceful protest is not guaranteed. Let us start with dialogue, not protest. We must find a rally point, create a podium, and take turns to air our views without exposing innocent citizens to danger. Remember that harming ordinary citizens who may not share our vision is not acceptable. Instead, we must work towards winning their endorsement. We cannot destroy what we have to demand for what we do not have. This government is addressing the issues, and we want to be part of finding solutions. We want rice, not cries, food, not boots. We want dialogue, not protest. We must protect Nigeria.
Thanks for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us is the background which will usher us into the conversation for this morning.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has increased interest rates by 50 basis points from 26.25% to 26.75%, aimed at sustaining efforts in curbing inflation and rising food prices. CBN Governor Olayemi Kadoso announced this after the Apex Bank's 296th Monetary Policy Committee meeting in Abuja on Tuesday. The Monetary Policy Committee also retained the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45% and merchant banks at 14% and retained the liquidity ratio at 30%. On the reason for the 50 basis point hike, Chairman of the Monetary Policy Committee, Mr. Yemi Cardoso, noted recent events in the economy such as inflation and the need to stabilize the foreign exchange market as a rationale for the increase. He noted that despite the June 2024 uptick in inflation, prices are expected to moderate in the near term as monetary policy gaining further traction in addition to further measures by the fiscal authority to address food inflation. The Monetary Policy Committee worried that food inflation and rising energy costs continue to undermine price stability. He further referenced recent policies of the federal government to import specific staple foods such as rice, maize, and wheat to help stem the rising food inflation, but warned that the timeline should be followed in order not to stifle the gains made in local food production. Additionally, Mr. Cardoso praised the convergence between the official exchange rate and that of the parallel market as part of effort to reduce arbitrage in that sector. The Monetary Policy Committee meeting is the highest policy-making committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria with the mandate to review economic and financial conditions in the economy by determining appropriate stance of policy in the short to medium term. The questions in the minds of Nigerians is how these changes in the nation's monetary policy will help in boosting Nigeria's economy and how it will translate in curbing inflation and rising food prices, among others. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will find answers to these and more on the program.
Many thanks, Ibrahim Gunda, for that background. Now, joining us to discuss the CBN MPC resolutions, we have seated Dr. Ladi Bala Kefi, MNI, Acting Director, Monetary Policy Department, Central Bank of Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, and we have also been joined here by Professor Ken Ife, who is a development economics and public policy analyst. Good to see you on the program again.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, we have Niya Kinshiju, Chairman, Independent Media Initiative and Financial and Investments Analyst, also joining us. It's a pleasure to welcome you.
A pleasure as always. Thanks for having me.
Perhaps we just begin with Dr. Ladi Bala Kefi to run us through major highlights of the MPC meeting just concluded recently.
Okay, thank you for having me. So the MPR rate was increased by 50 basis points. The CRR was retained at 45%, and the liquidity ratio at 30%, and the CRR for merchant banks was retained at 14%. So before these decisions were arrived at, the MPC members discussed extensively for 2 days the macroeconomic environment, looking at the 4 sectors of the economy: the fiscal sector, the monetary sector, the external sector, and the financial markets. And it was really a tough debate because the management of the bank and the MPC members are mindful of the current situation in the country. So on the back of that, we decided, the committee decided to hike the rate by 50 basis points because, as you know, the last inflation figures that came out, inflation had inched up from over 33% to 34.19%, which is quite high, high, and the drivers of that is food inflation, and food inflation is something that has impact on everybody in the country. So in order to curb that food inflation, that was the rider to why that decision was taken. And you know, as theory says, inflation is when you have too much money chasing too little goods. So the challenge we're having is monetary policy alone cannot handle inflation, cannot address inflationary pressures. We will need the fiscal authorities also to chip in, do their own bit. There are structural issues in the economy. We have insecurity in the economy. We have everywhere, when we looked at the report, in every sector, especially the areas, the regions where food are grown predominantly, you have insecurity there. You have banditry, you have insurgency, we have kidnapping. Farmers are afraid to go to the farms because of the fear of being kidnapped. So it's a collaborative effort to address this. So now the tools that the central bank has to address inflation is for us to use our own policies, which we have control over. So that is the basis.
Talking about control over, the policies, the average Nigerian watching now, we want to know how these policies would affect their lives, looking at the present economic realities. Of course, looking at the statistics from NBS, the country inflation reached an all-time high in June, hitting 34.19%. Food inflation rose to 40.87% compared to 40.66% in May 2024. And if you compare with last year, that puts food inflation at 15.62% higher than what it was as at June last year, which was 25.25%. Yeah. Now, you said, these policies, of, if you like, these rates, were taken by the CBN. And of course, watching the MPC meeting since the beginning of this year, there has not been a significant improvement in the economy. So could you explain to us how raising the interest rate from 26.25% to 26.75% amid the soaring inflation and the skyrocketing food prices would help the economy and help the average Nigerian?
Okay. So I think your statement that despite the previous hike that we have not achieved much, it's let me just give you an insight into what we have achieved. Exchange rate plays a big role, a huge role in inflation in Nigeria. We have studies that have empirically verified that. Because as I said, we are not producing enough to meet the demand in the economy. Since we are not producing enough, we're importing food. And when you import food, you have the pass-through inflation food. So this rate hike, we hope that if we reduce the quantum of liquidity in the system, that we will be able to address this high inflation. And let me also add that in the course of our studies, when we were doing some research, we discovered that this exchange rate differentials has made our currency cheap, while, for example, the CFA, the countries that are our borders, our neighboring countries, the CFA is now stronger than the dollar, than the naira. Since the CFA is stronger than the naira, we have middlemen that collect produce from farmers. The little that the farmers are producing are taken from them and smuggled out of the country to neighboring countries. And when they do that, they are doing that because they are taking advantage of the exchange rate arbitrage between the naira and the dollar. So now it's cheaper for them to buy food in Nigeria and export and take to other countries than for them to sell here in Nigeria. So if a poor farmer, a middleman comes and gives him money and he discovers he can sell it at a higher price to the middleman, he will sell it rather than selling it in the market here. So the efforts that central bank has undertaken in the last few months has led to inflows into the economy. Our reserves, when this new management team took over, our reserves was at about 31 billion or thereabout. But now our reserves has inched up to over 37 billion. So it is bringing stability, and we're trying to reduce the volatility in the exchange rate market. We're trying to converge the different segments of the market that existed in the past. And if we're able to address that, it will help with them.
But listening to Olayemi Kadoso yesterday, he talked about the fact that the CBN is trying to put in measures to ensure that inflation is brought under control and the economy is a bit stable. You are putting the blame now on other factors as being responsible for the high inflation. Could you speak to us about what these other measures the CBN governor was referring to yesterday when he talked about the CBN, trying to reduce the inflation rate?
Okay, yes. Thank you for that question. It's a very good question. So the CBN has, we have shares in some of the development finance institutions, such as the Bank of Industry. We also have in NEXIM and Bank of Agriculture. So what we're trying to do now is to strengthen their capacity to enable them effectively undertake their task within their mandate. So we have opened discussions with the Bank of Industry in particular to refocus them to lend, to on-lend to banks, to citizens and businesses that actually need the funds. Not just randomly, because in the past you will see BOI, Bank of Agriculture, giving loans, all kind of loans to different people, when actually they should be given to SMEs. Now we're working with the BOI to ensure that their focus is on SMEs. SMEs, it's known, small and medium scale enterprises, they are known generally to be the bane of an economy. If you look at in Nigeria now, we have a lot of them spread all over the country. And if we're able to empower them, you will see that the people at the lower cadre, the poverty alleviation will be achieved. Because you see our people going around doing small businesses everywhere. So if we empower them, we strengthen them, we'll be able to achieve that target.
Well, I think one of the things Yenre was trying to find out was how all of this have impacted the ordinary Nigerian. But I'll give you a breather now so that I get to Professor Ken Ife to ask him what he makes of the MPC meeting, the decisions taken, and the implications for the ordinary Nigerians.
There are several objectives that are being pursued. But why I'm happy is because they are addressing the supply and demand side of Forex, because Forex stability is even more important than the nominal value of the exchange rate at any point in time. Because when you arrest the arbitrage, then the fact that you have huge deposit of the dollarization of our economy will become a bigger risk than the return on the transactions based on that. So when you remove that, then those who are carrying the dollar are at risk. So they now begin to release their dollar into the system. So on one hand, the first side, and second point is one of the ECOWAS macroeconomic convergence criteria is that member states should not have negative real interest rate. Now that speaks to the first action being taken, which is to constantly increase the MPR rate. So moving in with 50 basis points is small, but it's still sending that signal that we are still trying to close the gap, because we're already on negative real interest rate by inflation being at 34 and the MPR rate being at 26 points. So we're in negative territory. But so the more you inch up, the more you send the signal to foreign portfolio investors, please come, please. And they're responding. And even though their money can disappear any day you cough, but at least they can stay long as you have removed the arbitrage. So that is a big gain for us. So we're increasing the supply of dollar through that measure. But the second one that came and changed the asymmetric corridor by moving it up effectively by 400 basis points is actually speaking to the interbank transaction, because banks are buying, borrowing from central bank, and of course some of that their money end up in hitting up the exchange rate. So that is constricting that space. So the action taken is both on the supply of forex and on the demand for forex. And the net effect is to try to close the negative real interest rate, and at the same time to maintain stability. So that stability, as my colleague has pointed out, is fueling inflation in two ways. One is there is imported inflation, which is very significant. And even as you look at, if you analyze the inflation, there are 5 segments in inflation. You have the food basket sub-index that cruises at over 40% and is giving a gap of about 7% for years. But you have the core inflation, you have headline inflation, CPI, you have urban and the rural inflation. Now, the core inflation, which excludes all volatile items, energy and food, still has a component of imported food in that core inflation, as the food inflation has a component of imported food. So it's active on both. So you still have to take that off. And then there's inflation in all other commodities from being imported. So that you can't do much about.
Right.
So the decision has impact on how the man on the street is going to, but of course you are going to still say, but why is the figure still increasing? No, you understand, there's a lot of other dynamics. You've not imported at insecurity, you've pointed out all that, but there's other dynamics. Salary increase now, 70%. Market people won't even wait for you to pay the first one. They're already raising their prices. People that speculate on increased price will hold their goods at a hoarding. So, and then they all impact on the inflation figure. But if you imagine, the last 3 months, there was not only that the inflation year on year was still increasing, but the month to month was decreasing. It was only last month that you had an uptick.
All right, Professor Kanife.
Just a moment. From in my head, I'm imagining.
I've confused you more.
I'm imagining the number of ordinary Nigerians that I will encounter today who will be telling me, tell Prof to tell us how all of this will amount to affordability of garri, affordability of rice, affordability of beans, all of which are, are skyrocketing without any restriction. Okay. Now, I tell you something. Food inflation sub-index is less amenable to monetary policy intervention. And I tell you why. Because the only thing monetary policy can do in that food arena is to try and moderate the arbitrage on forex to reduce the hemorrhage. But it does not deal with cross-border demand. 100 million francophone countries surround us, citizens, and they are buying our food because there's an artificial currency strength of the CFA. 10 years ago, 1 naira was buying 3 CFA. Now it's 0.7% of 0.7 CFA, which means in relation to them, our money is like 80% devalued. And it is not because their economy is strong. It's not strong. France pegged their CFA to dollar and then bonds 80% of their reserves to keep that value. And so they're just taking our food, because not only that, not for the reason of poor agroecology, no, not even the flood, no, because it is very cheap to buy Nigerian food. And they're buying it with Nigerian naira, not dollar. And ECOWAS Treaty blocks you from doing anything. ECOWAS Treaty and the protocol says free movement of food, goods, services, and right of establishment. Unless you move to value addition at the frontier states, will you be able to raise the value of those commodities and then bring it under ETLS? So we can now begin to apply our restrictions. But you can't do that.
Professor Kanife, I'd like to beg you because, like the NLC said, Nigerians are hungry and angry. So they would like to understand what you're saying. So it would be good if you try, I understand there are terms that should be used when discussing things like this, try and break it down as much as possible so that they can understand and the anger can, reduce. But I would like to get to Niyi Akinshiju. Understanding is important, of course. So Niyi Akinshiju, I want to hear from you, what you think about the increase in the rates by the CBN. The latest figures, because a lot of people are skeptical about this increase. They say that it doesn't portend well for businesses and individuals in the country. But what's your view?
Well, I think the CBN as an institution has identified a challenge, and within the confines of its own mandate, would want to address that challenge. A major mandate of the CBN is price stability, and of course, control and regulation of liquidity. And I'm trying to use what you call the basic language. And of course, the liquidity would translate to me that if you have so much money in circulation, and you are not producing so much, to find equity between the quantum of money in that circulation and what you have in your economy, there will be a tendency for prices to go up. Because just like Madam said, you now have more money, chasing few goods. We particularly have a situation or a scenario of less commodity, as a result of some of the things Prof and Madam had said, especially in the food area. And even more concerning is the fact that data had also shown that there had been a surge in liquidity in our economy, what they call broad money, between M2 and M3. In May, M2 was 55.5 trillion naira. That's easily accessible, convertible cash money in the system. From that, by June, it had gone up to 64 trillion. So the data is showing that you have so much money in circulation. And sometimes this money could become actually errant money, money that does not have utility value, And to that extent, it would mean that the surge would be addressing or be pursuing demand that cannot be, that cannot be sated because of shortage of supply. So for the CBN, it is not even about concerns for fiscal, but the fact that you even have that data in place should give a central banker the headache that it has to control the volume, the quantum of money in circulation. But the truth of the matter is we have found ourselves in a situation where well thought out policy of government, had created these challenging, scenarios. The idea would now be, how do we attend to it? All of a sudden, the whole of Africa, from the West African region through to the Sahel, had started targeting Nigeria as a source of cheap food. That's reality. And unfortunately, we had also not used our resources the way we are supposed to use our land resources, which is more or less vested, in our subnationals. The latest data is that we have merely used, out of the 75 million hectares of arable land available to us, we have used just about 44% of that, over time. And it means that more than 54% of our arable land are remained, unemployed for its purpose. So there are still so many things we need to do. And thankfully, food production is not a long-term thing. When you properly and appropriately, employ land, for instance, within 6 months, you can start feeling the impact in the economy. So for me, it is not a situation of despair. I see opportunities, If the whole of Africa decides to eat our food, and we have 54% of our arable land still unemployed, it's an opportunity to drive production. It's an opportunity to earn more money. And most importantly, this black hole that had been created by the informal sector, just like Prof said, people come into Nigeria, buy our food, in domestic currency. So we are losing on both sides. So you have foreigners coming into the country, buying in domestic currency, which means that they should actually have bought in foreign currency, which would have added to our foreign exchange reserve, So there's also a need for the fiscal authority to create a control at that level, control our borders in such a way that even if you are going to buy food, let us ensure that you are buying in foreign currency. So that also help our farmers in the first instance, and by extension, help the country. So for my thinking is that we should see this as a challenge and as an opportunity. And of course, give that 6 months window, just as the federal government had said, had this policy of food importation. And for me, just like CBN also noted, the policy is not going to engender a direct cash injection, into the economy. It is to say, if you have money, if you are interested in this particular segment of the economy, you can import food. The federal government will not will not charge levy or taxes. And my typical example is rice. A bag of rice coming into the country, before now, would charge a total of 70% tax and levy. So if that 70% is reduced, it automatically translates to mean that 70% value of what we used to buy had been removed for this next 150 days. So I think there are measures that are being put in place to address this challenge. But for the CBN, I have nothing against the CBN. The CBN has seen a challenge and it's addressing that challenge.
Well, since you have mentioned the one you don't have nothing against, perhaps you will also tell us the one you have something against. So who is it?
No, of course, the more effective collaboration that is expected between the Monetary Policy Authority and the Fiscal Authority. And of course, when we start also talking about that, you see the dimensions it will also take. It's not a linear issue. There's so much to it that you need to address from a multiple point of view.
All right, thank you very much, Lee Akeshuju. Let's now welcome Yushau Aliu, who joined us a bit later. Yushau Aliu is a financial analyst. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
And straight up, well, some economic experts are suggesting focusing on resolving structural issues instead of depending solely on monetary policy changes to curb inflation. Do you agree?
I quite agree with that, because central bank always uses conventional tools to check conventional engagement of financial transactions, and that is the role of the bank. But what is left for the bank to understand again is that whatever roles they are playing is to bring prosperity. And if you attempted several policies over 36 months, which is 3 years, and it is not yielding the result, then definitely you have to check the indices you are working with. Let us be frank. Central Bank increases NPR in February by 400 basis points. It's so high. It's so high to check whatever gap that is created in financial transactions, and in attempt also to bridge the gap of making price stability in an economy. It is good to understand that there was central bank in 2009, and the central bank was also very efficient in 2009 when there was economic meltdown. The central bank was able to keep our reserve buoyant and policy trend consistent and favorable to all producers. You cannot sit in an economy where when the biggest investor in African soil is complaining of the NPR and still go ahead and make adjustment using conventional leverages. I am so concerned that if inflation today is 34.19%, it's a figure that was released by government agency. And if you take inflation 365 days ago, meaning that in July last year, 24.44%, and you check what an individual household is losing, you cannot compare prosperity last year and prosperity this year. So in my own contention, of course it is true the bank must use tools conventionally, but I have said it time without number that what we are facing in terms of food production are unconventionals. to us, and therefore unconventional models must be applied. I'm happy that Madam is stressing the point that we don't produce enough, and that gave me a plus from what we discussed earlier with Professor Angu and others in this place, claiming that we are producing enough and there's enough food. And I have called the attention of whoever is listening from everywhere. Go to your community, check the food supply in the market entirely, bring the entire goods together as an assumption, but call household to buy, empower them to buy food in their communities, whether you will see the remains of those food in our communities. I have said that time that probably it may not be a fact, but I said we are exporting more now. Our yam has markets. We have advertised our yam, and it has market not only in Africa but in Asia. So our yam is no longer stable in the market. Cassava, the same thing. Rice produced in the middle belt of Nigeria is taken out. So if you have these as factors responsible for our shortages, then what is the metric ton requirement of any crop in this economy? Let me tell you, Mr. Nii mentioned, but I prefer to use what former Minister of Agriculture, Ado Ogbe, stressed. 90 million hectares arable land. Only 5% is accessible. I'm from
accessible.
Accessible.
So it's not a question of not that we are just not using them.
Exactly. And you can attest to that. Just take a journey around Abuja. What you see is housing estates. And in each household, what they are looking for to survive is food. And we go to a limited market and with a limited income. So unconventionally, there are challenges. If we continue to bank on conventional tools, these conventional tools are based on certain assumptions.
So what unconventional measures are you thinking that the CBN should look at?
Good question.
Cost of input. How can you sell fertilizer at 45,000 per kg and you expect production at the end of production season prices to go down? We have to check cost of input. That is one. Two, we have to check the production zones. What is giving constraint to farmers to produce? A friend of mine is now in the hand of bandits because he wants to go to farm. As I'm speaking to you, lecturer with Federal College of Education, Zaria. So we have to check insecurity for us to produce. People are willing to produce, but at the end, attempting to produce will take all your savings and your family savings, and you go back to square zero. It has happened not to one household, not to two households, a lot of households. So unconventionally, it's not the work of the bank, but work of other agencies to look into that, so that you cannot sit in an economy for 12 calendar months and you are boasting that you are producing enough with rice pyramid, but every time food inflation is higher. What is wrong with our mentality? Understanding what is called prosperity or common prosperity or prosperity of a nation or prosperity of a growth of a nation or proportion of growth of the entire economy. I am optimistic that if the bank can halt this MPR, because biggest investor in Africa cried out and the bank is supposed to list it, because we know how many manufacturing sectors are being abandoned. In Kaduna, where I come from, in Zaria, where I come from, a lot of SMEs are going down. And let me affirm certain commitment unconventionally. Now taxes levy that is taken out, there is need for efficiency from the fiscal authorities to make sure that they organize those factors that can bring stability in general price, so that the common people will not be talking about protests. Do you understand? Because it's one thing for the bank. This central bank has made a lot of mistakes and they were identified. The bank was taken to the court for cashless policy. Myself, me, Akinshidu, explained in this hall that it's a good policy, but it came at the wrong time. When we discussed that matter, the CBN did not take enough models to check it, but at the end, the bank ended in court. That was a wrong measure. The intervention funds for agri development and finance, since 2014, Gordon Emefiele brought out proposal. I still have it, I still go through it, and I have seen very fine tools to make prosperity visible. But along the line, we saw how these monies have been some, if I can say, swallowed, because the bank is mandated to bring all these monies back. So it is good for us to understand that in any monetary policy is affecting household directly. And this household directly, it is the one good measure that will tell the bank that it succeeded is when you begin to see prosperity being appreciated.
All right, thank you so much, Yushua. You've made very significant points, and I'm sure Dr. Ladi wants to respond. Yeshua's argument is that the prosperity you talked about earlier is invisible. So could you respond to some of the comments that he has made, you know, about what the bank is doing? And of course, it's evident also that, you know, key investors in this country are also complaining about some of these policies of the CBN. So speak to us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yushao. Okay. So I'm surprised that you said that CBN should use unconventional monetary unconventional tools to address the current situation in the country. I think it was using unconventional tools that actually brought us to the level that we are now. We used the proposal that you talked about, that the past governor applied. Did you do some analysis or some study to find out the impact or the level of the success of that policy? That is what brought us to the current situation that we are now. We have you're
give us examples of those policies.
As I said earlier,
give us exampple of those unconventional policies that has brought us to where we are.
He mentioned a few that they rolled out policy. They were giving promoting some agriculture to farmers, right?
No, you didn't get me correctly.
Or the cashless policy.
What I emphasized, the cashless policy is conventional tool by the bank, because the bank attempted to moderate liquidity in the economy. And the bank, the crisis here is, it is the bank that came out to tell Nigerians that they have discovered that all these cash are not within the vault of the bank.
Okay, so
now let me put it straight. If the liquidity is not within the vault of the bank, then why can you assume that you use MPR to increase rate, to reduce those same monies that are not within the vault of the bank
from the hands of Nigerians,
while the vault, what is already out? These are conflicting issues.
No, they are not.
Okay.
They are not conflicting.
Okay.
And maybe you need to come. We monitor currency in circulation, and what the tools of monetary policy can do is to address the quantum of liquidity within its system. And you applying the tools that we have to moderate liquidity, and indeed we are succeeding. So the one that is outside the bank, it's not I don't want to use technical terms to further confuse the audience, because as you said, that's not what they are after, right? But the cashless policy, although as you said may be good, but it was ill-timed. It was not properly coordinated. So it is part of the mess that I earlier said the new management met on ground. And that is what we are trying to address now. And you saw the chaos that policy caused. And in addition, the unconventional tools that a lot of people are now saying the central bank should adopt, like him, to address unconventional situation and putting it exactly the way he put it. That's what brought us here today. If those tools were effective, we would not be here today. And as I said earlier, sorry, let me continue. As I said earlier, what we're trying to do now in the bank and what the Monetary Policy Committee members have identified in addition to the Committee of Governors of the Central Bank is that we need to work with these development finance institutions. We need to ensure that they are focused to undertake their mandates effectively. If you are SMEDAN, you will focus on attracting finance for smallholder farmers, for small businesses, so that the economy can grow. And you know, if you go to the market now, the cost of this food inflation is not merely caused by MPR. I had discussed other things that are the problem. For example, the insecurity in the country is a problem. You just said it yourself, that your friend was kidnapped. How will CBN address issue of kidnapping? It's outside the purview of the central bank. But it's just that in the past, the central bank put itself into so many things that we shouldn't be doing. And having done that for some years, the country now believes that we should take over all these functions that are not really within our mandate. Why should CBN address insecurity in the country? We will collaborate with the relevant agencies and sit and talk. Trade, Ministry of Trade should be involved in this. The Ministry of Agric should be involved in this. The Ministry of Industry, I think Trade and Industry are together. They should be involved in this. And indeed, the fiscal authorities are now trying to address these issues by, I think there are some interventions that they're trying to do to import food as a stopgap. And also, even the central bank, as I said last time I was here, we donated fertilizers. I think you should acknowledge that, Mr. Yushao.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you very much. We donated fertilizers because we know.
But to who? Middlemen?
No, not to
portfolio
middlemen.
farmers?
Of course not. This new management are compliant. We will not deal, we have no business dealing with farmers directly. We have no business dealing with middlemen or single men or whatever.
So who do you deal with?
We donated to the Ministry of Agric. And the Ministry of Agric, should they have the data?
Did you monitor that?
How can we...
That's important.
Why we should, after donating, it was done publicly. You want us to monitor a minister, an agency? We collaborate. And we did effective collaboration. And we are doing effective collaboration right now with all the necessary agencies. I think some months back, the Minister of Agric, the Minister of National Planning, the Minister of Finance, the Central Bank Governor had a 2-day retreat. And they discussed all the issues that are linked and how we will address it. And it is on the basis of that. So we know what the problems are and we are trying to address them.
Talking
How
about
confident are you that these collaborations, as you put them, achieve the desired results? Because if you don't monitor, you just donate, how sure are you that they reach the people, the places that they are supposed to reach? Because if they don't, then your donation might just be in vain.
Yes, I think if you read in the media, the Ministry of Agric, they have distributed the fertilizers.
All right, let's
pause you a bit. No, sorry, let me just add quickly that you may not see, you said we shouldn't use technical terms, but I would like to tell you that we have moderated the growth in money supply by using our tools. And when you have too much liquidity in the system, which led to the Naira redesign, right? You will be reducing inflation in the system. It's just that explaining it to the layman in the language that he will understand may be a bit difficult. Professor now talked to you about real interest rate and all that, and you said he was going too technical for your crowd. But be rest assured, we're doing the right thing. We're mindful of businesses that are big, that will believe that our MPR hiking the rate may affect their business. We are mindful of that, but at the same time, our current concern is to bring down food inflation. And there's what you call the impossible trinity. The central bank cannot be dealing with all three things at the same time: growth, inflation, capital inflows.
So what is it dealing with at the moment?
Right now, this our MPC is targeting inflation.
But the inflation has not improved if that is your target.
You cannot expect something that has been brewing for over 10 years.
Let's
for three MPCs to address that. There's what you call the time lag, and you need to give us some slack. By next month, you will see some moderation, and there is a forecast that inflation by end of December, it will go down to 27%.
By the end of December?
Yes, but we are even working harder to ensure
that it comes earlier.
And indeed, there is that fiscal and monetary policy coordination ongoing now. We are having meetings with them. We've signed, I said it the last time I was here, we are signing an MOU with them. And you can see that the fiscal authorities are also planning to bring in fertilizers and food also to address the shortage.
By the way, Dr. Lade, just to let you know that it's Nigerians that, would want the CBN to do the needful as fast as possible. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, the NLC said Nigerians are hungry and angry. So they want to see results as fast as possible. And maybe that's the reason why we want to hear exactly how this is, affecting the average Nigerian. Of course, they are watching you now and listening to you. You're a representative of the CBN right here. So, of course, what you say is what the CBN is doing. But I'd like to get to Professor Ken Ife. So much has been said. You mentioned, the foreign exchange being an issue. In your own opinion, what are the best options you think the CBN can apply to tackle some of the issues we're facing with our foreign exchange?
Okay, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. See, the food inflation thing, it would be unfair to be facing CBN 100% square on food inflation. I have to tell you that. If you look at the food map, I started by telling you the cross-border demand. It's got nothing to do with CBN. It's got nothing to do, and our monetary policy cannot affect foreign countries. We can't touch their monetary policy. But apart from that cross-border food demand, you also have the fact that I have tackled the Minister of Agriculture on why are you allowing palliatives to be bought in the same food market, reserves being bought in the strategic reserves from the same food market. Are they not inflationary? And then you see flood coming in that will decimate thousands of hectares of already planted things. Don't you see all those dangers? What has monetary policy got to do with those? Nothing. You understand what I'm saying? So there are more hostages to the food inflation story than we are looking at. But secondly, but to come to the central bank on the aspect of unorthodox policy. You see, the last administration has tried to pull in domestic finance intervention to deal with the market failure in access to finance to MSMEs, to the extent that people would have announced saying that they burnt their hands. So, for some reason, the current management decided to take a backseat, to pull back. But when you pull back, which they're entitled to do, and then you also have rising MPR rates and all those indices that put more stress on lending from MSMEs, then the question is, there's a bigger gap. How do you fill it? So you can now see that the central bank is now talking to domestic finance institutions and saying, okay, what can we do to increase your capacity to fill that gap? And so the likes of BOI and then the Bank of Agriculture, a Bank of Agriculture, for example, you have to recapitalize Bank of Agriculture because they haven't got that capacity unless you recapitalize them. Nexim Bank, you have to recapitalize them to be able to lend. But Bank of Industry is sound. AAA rating, they will do a lot more for everybody. So bringing them in and others is the way to go to fill the gap. Because to be honest with you, it's hurting the MSME sector. It's not just Dangote saying it. The evidence is out there. Companies are fleeing the country. Those who are producing are laying workers off. And then you have stringent, difficult conditions of doing business in the country exacerbated by insecurity. So what the CBN is trying to do is what I've been crying that they should do from middle of last year when they started this, get these people in position so that they are beginning to mop up. When you are withdrawing, the devil doesn't fill the gap you are creating. So I think they're moving in the right direction.
You haven't attacked the issue of the foreign exchange, which you mentioned as a major challenge.
Sorry, can I just say the foreign exchange? If that foreign exchange is stabilized, which is what we're doing, and as I said, we attracted this new management from the time they came to date. They have attracted over almost $10 billion into the economy. And you know why? It's because of the interest rate. It's because of the interest rate. If we hike our rates, we attract inflows, capital inflows. And if we attract capital inflows, it will stabilize the volatility that is in that exchange rate. And once we do that, Prof had earlier spoken about the pass-through of exchange rate to food inflation. And I also mentioned it, also imported food inflation, what we call imported food inflation. Let me put it in layman's language. When you import rice into the country, you use foreign exchange to import rice into the country. So you're importing that inflation into the country. And if we're able to manage the volatility in that segment, in that space, it will moderate food prices. So there is a connection, but it's how we will now put it down. We are planning to communicate more. We are already, this is part of the communication, but we're also planning to take it to another level, to different segments, like maybe the market women.
So they can understand what's going on.
So that they can understand what's
beautiful.
going on.
I hear that you're going to leave us shortly because of other pressing engagements. But, you know, in line with what you have just said, the International Money Transfer Operator License, so that's the IMTO, of course, is a crucial requirement for operating legitimate money transfer business in Nigeria. And the CBN approved 14 of them earlier this year. Now, how essential is this, for encouraging diaspora remittances and inflows? And how will it impact the liquidity in the market?
Oh, thank you very much for that question. It will have a huge impact. You know, Nigeria is a supplier of labor overseas. We have huge migrants that have that are living in the US, in the UK, in Saudi Arabia, and they send monies home back to their families. So licensing additional IMTOs is to enable them, and then we reduced some of the restrictions, and so to make it easier for Nigerians in the diaspora to send in their money into the formally, so that we can capture them in the formal sector. So if they are sending it in formally, it will help stabilize the volatility in the economy, and it will help the FX liquidity situation in the country, which again will now, if the FX foreign exchange is stabilized, it will also help the food inflation.
All right, you have to leave, but just one quick question, because I remember seeing a headline. Yes, I remember seeing a headline some weeks back now about the fact that you're talking about the formal sector, that even in the country at the moment, Nigerians are exiting the formal banking sector and relying on fintechs and other kinds of other ways to do business and of course get money and all of that. How is the CBN trying to address that?
No, but fintech, the fintech are licensed. Most of them are licensed by Nigeria. So moving from deposit money banks to fintech is not moving from formal to informal. Do you understand? Like Money Point is formal. They are also formal. They are just they are supplying a certain segment, like the youth. And new businesses that are cropping up every day, they are helping to ease the burden of transaction. For example, now you can pay on your platform. So you're reducing that stress on going into the banking hall, queuing up. So fintech is formal. It's not.
And it is assisting the CBN in meeting its goals?
Oh yes, it is, because they are licensed by the central bank. Okay. You can't operate in that space if you're not licensed.
That's Oladi Barakefi, MNI, Acting Director, Monetary Policy Department, Central Bank of Nigeria. It's been a pleasure as always having you on Good Morning
Thank
Nigeria.
you. And it's also always a pleasure to be here.
I would like to have you more often, just so that we can understand some of these
We'll miss you for the rest of the program, but for now, let's get on a break and we'll be right back to continue the conversation.
Nigeria, a land of rich culture and diverse voices, where every voice matters. In times of disagreement, let's choose dialogue over discord. Together, we can find solutions through understanding and respect. Let's build a stronger Nigeria, one conversation at a time. Dialogue, not protest. Unity, not division. Nigeria, united in dialogue.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
The federal government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
Thank you for staying with us. We've been discussing the MPC's, the Monetary Policy Committee's decisions recently, and we just signed off the CBN representative, Dr. Aladi Balakefi. But let me get back to Nia Kinshiju. You know, she has talked a lot about what the CBN is doing, and did say along the line that the CBN alone will not change the inflation, the situation of inflation in the country. So what else should be done? Yushab Aliyu had mentioned that the farms you talked about, the land that you talked about, is not accessible.
Well, I'm not too sure about the term accessible. What I know is that the Agri Ministry has a data on arable land in Nigeria. And arable land are deemed to be available land. Available land to the extent that we have 75 million hectares arable land. Out of these 75 million hectares, effectively about 46%, is being employed for the purpose of farming. Now, what that also suggests is that we have not been effectively, employing available land. And that is why when you are driving on an highway, to your left and to your right, on the shoulders of the road, you see large expanse of land that are not employed in any way. They are still forest, And you can compare that to traveling from London to wherever, by road or by rail. And you see how the two sides, the shoulders of the roads are employed, either for herd farming or for crop farming. You see that obviously, and that is even the easiest way of farming, because you are near the transport line. So if you have products, you can easily come onto the highway or to the rail track and move them. But we don't have that. So what's the challenge for us is that there's a need for collaboration. If we are talking about food inflation and food intervention now, for the federal government and the subnationals to effectively collaborate. And I am wishing for a time where we'll have the National Council of Agriculture, if there's something like that, meet, where the Federal Minister of Agriculture would constantly be meeting with the Commissioner of Agriculture. Because the truth of the matter is that lands are vested in governors, in the subnationals. So the federal government don't actually have rights, of whatever initiative, except one that they may want to, how do I want it? They want to discover. I mean, they may want to take away from the state.
But what do they discuss at the Council of State? I know that most ministries have their Council of State on agriculture, and as it is elsewhere.
No, the Council of States discusses sundry issues, but we are talking about specifically issues that affect agriculture here. And so, just like you have Council of Education ministries, you have Council of Communication ministries. So, would it be out of place? I've not heard, if there's a Council of Agriculture, and it is very important because, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture don't have proprietary rights over any land in Nigeria. So you need to. Meanwhile, it is supposed to be the facilitator, of agricultural growth, in terms of input that you shall talked about. The Ministry of the Federal Ministry could be in a good place. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture could be in a good place to supply or to facilitate supply of inputs. The federal government, latest we had, purchased 2,000 tractors. Those will be distributed to the state. How would they be distributed? It's not in the place of the CBN, for instance, to monitor how fertilizers were distributed. They don't even have the capacity to monitor. But we have structural issues. Perhaps until lately, when we are celebrating the financial autonomy of local governments as declared by the Supreme Court, the most important tier of government and governance had more or less been emasculated over the years. And if you are talking about distribution without the local government, it means that you get to a point between the federal government and the state government that things disappears. There's no accounting process at the level of the local government. So, and that's where the users, the beneficiaries of everything that is coming from the federal government, are residents.
Thank you very much, for those points that you have made. I'd like to get to Professor Ken Ife now. A lot of people have lauded the federal government for the food import waiver. They say it's a good move. But some people think that looking at the uncertainties in the foreign exchange markets, will a policy actually achieve its targets, since Forex is still needed to do import? And then we have hammered on the fact that production capacity being low has been responsible for where we are at the moment. So how will this waiver affect production? Is it a plus in terms of production, or it's a negative?
No, first, there's the criticality of if we don't have food, people will die. So it's an existential challenge. And if we are hearing from the Senate, Lawan, that there is nothing in the food strategic reserves. So I'm not interested in entertaining the argument about whether you should import or not. People cannot die for any other policy reason. So what it is that my guidance is, throw it out to everybody. It's just selective. If you rather than import rice, import paddy. Paddy will be given to the installed capacity. We have huge installed capacity in the country for milling rice. So when paddy comes, you employ that capacity, you keep our jobs. Then you bring it even at a much more reduced price and you deliver to the market. So that is a much more understandable, and it's for a limited time. And so some of those processors, example Olam, Dangote, they have huge capacity. So you can say, okay, we'll give you license to import 2 million paddies, tons of litter, and then process it. And you can monitor that. So it's easier than to say to everybody, everybody can hire a go and import. And then you go back to square one and start strangulating our local production capacity. So that is that's my take on that particular side.
Thank you, Professor Kendife. What do you make of the food import waiver, given the uncertainties in the foreign exchange market?
This one you are talking to me directly. As I'm speaking to you now, I am boiling. I always try to be frank.
Please calm down.
Calm down.
You want water?
No, I don't need it. All I need is to bring out what is paining me. I will be calm. It's unfortunate. What I mean by the central bank using unconventional tools to address. The bank insisted that it's using MPR to control inflation. And the bank is telling us today that they cannot control food inflation unconventionally because insecurity is not their job. What I am emphasizing is that the bank should understand hiking rates is diseconomies to manufacturing and SMEs. I am one. Two, what is needed is not from the bank to use unconventional, it's for the fiscal authority to use unconventional tools, supply bottlenecks, lack of good road, lack of insecurity, all these things. I am not so stupid to say that the bank should carry gun and go and fight insecurity. Development financing. In 2014, Godwin Emefiele Stress is going to manage people's oriented central bank. Is it what is on ground today? If it is not, no, listen carefully. If it is not what is on ground today, then central bank has failed us to bring people's oriented central bank. I'm not speaking about individual. For Kodoso, I appreciated his courage to bring radical ideas into banking recapitalization, which is very necessary. But what I am not comfortable, and I will not be comfortable, seeing manufacturing sector suffering. As I am speaking to you, our company, Hulhul the International Rice, we have applied for that waiver. Right now we are paying Dumoraj. Because we cannot get the waiver and take our own imported boilers. That is what is paining me. We have imported with a very serious amount of money. It is lying high, it is lying fallow in Kaduna dry port. We are seeking for a waiver. I was an IDEC department last week, and it was promised that we will get the waiver so that we can go and discharge. We are also importing the second batch for your information. So all this fashion of agriculture, I am involved. The paddy Dr. Ken is speaking about, that is what we are looking. We are increasing the capacity of our production. If we increase the capacity of your production, where is the paddy? There is no paddy. Right now I'm speaking to you, the rice mill is closed down, no paddy. And then somebody is telling me that there is food in the market and there is a way this thing can come down.
So are you saying there's bottlenecks?
There are a lot of bottlenecks. That is what I mean by unconventional tools to address this. Speculators are everywhere. People will go buy the paddy kept and then designing price for it per ton, and they sell at will. These are unconventional. These are the things that I mean unconventional to address food insecurity, because food security does not end in only production. It's also including in pricing. If consumers don't have the income to buy, there is no any security to them. There was a story last week. Somebody came, met some people. Please, can you buy pap and go say a beans cake for me? They say, these are the kind of people that have dead mind. In less than 2 minutes, the person died. They all regret it. So, to him, There is nothing like food security because he died of hunger. So we don't want that scenario. What we are emphasizing about the bank, quite okay monetary policy tools are used. And these tools are known to every economy conventionally. But it dependent on certain assumptions. You cannot steal our dollar and kept at home. It's unconventional. That is what I mean. How can you steal dollars in foreign reserve and kept in soccer ways? And you are telling me you are using conventional tools to control money supply while the supply is already in soccer ways. So I am passionate about this nation, and I love the tempo the CBN is taking to bring new ideas into the bank. There must be a central bank governor, the same way that there must be the World Bank president. Is an arrangement that is working worldwide. I see no reason why our bank for 10 years. Remember when I mentioned 2009, there was economic meltdown as a result of mortgage crisis in the United States. Nigeria was not affected because there was adequate arrangement. Our foreign reserve was high, our crude sales was good, our subsidy payment was stable, and at the same time, inflation was 11.5%. There is no way you give me any courage when you tell me that you are targeting inflation to be 27%, because I know what 27 is year on year. And I know what month-on-month inflation is revealing. It's not as a result of any measure. There is no way month-on-month food inflation prices will change month-on-month. What is the lacuna?
Because of time, what are your recommendations? What do we do?
The recommendation is first, we are discussing monetary policy. And I have said it over a year ago, over 2 years. And the bank is aware that please, for the meantime, this investment you are attracting, the forex you are attracting, all these $10 billion that the bank is saying that is as a result of raising interest rate, I don't have full detail, but I will find it. But I'm thinking it's as a result of subsidy removal. That's why we are having extra dollars in the corpus of the bank, not as a result of diaspora remittance. Because we all have diaspora in our families. We all have them. And if they are sending, we know. And if they are not, and this volatility of inflation worldwide has affected several sectors. And insecurity also. I come from the region where there is high insecurity. Giwa, that has the largest market of maize. If you'll be surprised that the production zone is controlled by bandits. They decide who goes to farm and decide when to sell. So right from there, they are controlling the supplies. These are unconventional. And I'm not asking central bank. I am the governor. Remember, Erufa, he spoke when he was a governor then. Remember. So, but in my own, this MPC halt the NPR. 50 basis in 30 days, 400 basis in 300 in less than 60 days. All this thing is diseconomies to our manufacturing. We want to thrive. The paddy doctor is speaking about, we collect money in millions from bank to buy the paddy. There is no paddy. And the interest rate has changed. The prices at which the payment of interest has increased. So if we are to, at the end of the day, get our capital back, we have to hike prices of whatever we produce. And that is why inflation will not come down.
Professor Kenife, you want to respond and give your recommendations quickly?
I think there is a sense in what he's arguing, because even as the acting director of monetary policies pointed at $10 billion being realized from foreign portfolio investment inflow, it's still not, it's nothing compared to others, because when the central bank clamped on the commercial banks to close their net open position to 20%, what it means is that all the nearly $5 billion that the banks were holding, they had to sell them. When the bank, some of the measures have resulted in inflow, a greater inflow of foreign diaspora remittance. Last month figure is about $2.37 billion inflow. which means if it continues like that, we'll break the record of about 28 or more $billion inflow from diaspora. And then when the government using fiscal means to now start securitizing our assets, well, for example, you've seen Frexim give us about $5 billion on future sales of crude.
Yeah.
That's securitization. We'll bring in more dollars. We'll do that for gas. Securitization will bring in more dollars. So we are using other fiscal means to bring in more dollars. So those dollars coming in and are even more important than the foreign portfolio investment. The foreign portfolio investment can vanish any day. So, but then if you look at what you are actually saying, they've actually started working on it, because you could notice that last month the increase on the NPR rate was about much more than here is 50 basis points, but 150 basis points.
Yes.
So it's coming down. But then they now turn back on the supply side to squeeze the commercial banks by increasing the 400 basis points from asymmetric corridor.
Yeah, asymmetric corridor.
From asymmetric corridor. So they are listening to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And they're
I
doing
think we
it.
should allow the few, I think about 2 minutes more that we have for Akishiju to make his concluding remarks.
Well, just I have noted, the CBN is doing what it's supposed to do. I don't have anything absolutely against the CBN, because when you look at data, you react to data. We need more collaborative efforts amongst agencies of government at the federal government level and at the subnational level, for especially this food thing. And again, it is also simple economy. Cross-border trade in Nigeria's food production line, it's an headache by itself, So to a large extent, what perhaps we need is even to start driving organic interest in food production amongst the Nigerian population. We have a huge population, and if each household, of course, statistically, more than 40 million households in Nigeria are involved directly in food production. But also, given the land that is being employed, it will mean that just under 2 hectares of land, are being used by that by the household. So, which means we don't even have more land. Even if we have arable land, we don't have household employing more land for food, for agricultural engagement. So those are the kind of things we still need to attend to. And just like I said, agricultural venture is a short-term impact venture. Within 6 months, once policies are impacted, we can start seeing the results manifesting within 6 months.
All right. Niyi Akishiju, Chairman, Independent Media Initiative and Initiative Policy and Financial and Investments Analyst. It's been a pleasure, as always, having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thanks so much.
All right, Professor Ken Ife, Development Economics and Public Policy Analyst. Thank you very much for your time and thoughts on Good Morning Nigeria. And not forgetting Yushao Ali, Financial Analyst. It's been a pleasure having you, and we implore you to get something cold when you leave here, so that
I'm already down.
So that the boiling will calm down.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. I am Victor as well. See you again tomorrow.
And just as Yeshua has calmed his nerves, we hope Nigerians too would calm down and expect results from all of these policies. I'm Henry John. Stay tuned to the NTA. Good morning.